Discover the touching moment that revealed the incredible strength of a millionaire's autistic son. Thomas Lancaster stood atop his glass fortress, a palace of ambition overlooking the hills of suburban San Francisco, yet he felt more imprisoned than ever. He was 45, a titan of real estate, known in exclusive circles as a keen strategist who could turn dilapidated buildings into multi-million-dollar properties. Success wrapped around him like a finely tailored suit, but the fit sometimes felt constricting. His son, Jamie, the boy who came with a spark of creativity just beneath the surface, often faded into the background of his father's polished life, casting a shadow he could never escape. As deadlines loomed, the high-stakes meeting with investors burned in his mind, while whispers of Jamie's art presentation fluttered like beneath the main event. Thomas hesitated at the fork of his priorities. Would he go hear about Jamie's talents or sit with those who filled his pockets? The decision felt thunderous. The very thought of Jamie leaving for the art show made him feel uneasy. What if the world saw his son's brilliance? Or worse, what if they rejected it? Aside from the gnawing guilt, the weight of a real estate empire crowded Thomas's thoughts. The firm was his first love, demanding more than he ever conceived. "Dad?" Jamie's voice, soft yet filled with yearning, broke through the thick fog of his thoughts. "Are you coming?" The question haunted him, echoing against walls of success he'd built and now found hollow. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But how could he attend Jamie's art show when every fiber of his being pushed him to the meeting? He was skating on thin ice, ambitious yet exhausted. He couldn't breathe. His racing mind was a pendulum, swinging back and forth between parental responsibility and ambition, weighed down by regret. So much unforgivable time passed each moment, another reminder of how he neglected Jamie's artistic spirit. Days turned into a flurry of calls and negotiations, the world of billion-dollar investments and towering profits blurring his vision. He should have paid attention to Jamie's whispers, the nuances of his worries. Now, facing a chaotic moment at a community gathering, Thomas was struck harder than he expected. Walking through, he noticed the vibrant display of Jamie's artwork, an explosion of colors and shapes that seemed to pulse with the very essence of life. How could he have missed this? The raw emotion etched in every piece was what he longed to see in his son, yet as admiration gave way to sorrow, he felt deep frustration. Each colorful canvas shouted back at him, revealing the disconnection they shared. The achievements in his business felt meaningless stacked against the empty spaces in his heart. How could he seek accolades for himself while Jamie's potential lay buried on an easel? The painting felt like a conflict tearing at him, further widening the chasm between father and son. But here was Jamie, caught beneath the weight of his father's expectations. The reality clawed at Thomas, demanding he confront everything he hid behind. The question lingered: had he forfeited their relationship in pursuit of a dream that glittered like gold yet felt void of substance? Time was ticking, Jamie needed him, and for once, delusional success faltered in comparison to the bond begging for repair. How would he choose between society's accolades and being the father his son so desperately deserved? As days raced towards Jamie's art exhibition, Thomas felt a tightening grip of despair. A moment of reckoning awaited, but would it shatter or transform their fragile connection forever? The stakes were rising with each passing hour, and as Thomas steeled himself against the storm within, the glowing easels of Jamie's work mirrored the tension, each moment more critical than the last. The air was thick with anticipation as the day of Jamie's art exhibition approached. Thomas Lancaster felt as if he were walking the tightrope of his own existence, balancing the undeniable pull of his business ambitions against the urgent call of fatherhood. In the weeks leading up to this moment, time had slipped through his fingers, like grains of sand scattered away from him. Each day spent in the office seeped into the next, a relentless cycle of meetings and discussions orchestrated to maximize profits without acknowledging the cost his relationship with Jamie. Whenever he closed his eyes, he envisioned his son's gleaming artwork, each brushstroke reflecting a part of Jamie that Thomas barely knew. The privilege of a father's presence tugged at him, whispering gently at first, then growing fiercely insistent as opening night drew closer. The transformative power of art had been overlooked in Thomas's corporate world, where numbers dominated conversations and emotions were summarily dismissed. But that evening, a spark ignited a fire within him. Would he arrive as the overlord of real estate or as Jamie's father, not just an attendee but a participant in his son's world? He wrestled with the implications of his decision. If he chose the exhibition, what repercussions would that hold for his investors and reputation? Conversely, if he bypassed the show for one more deal, what lasting damage would he inflict upon his son's spirit? The weight of that choice lay squarely on his shoulders, and every moment felt like a countdown to an inevitable collision. On the day of the exhibition, he ventured into the bustling gallery, the walls adorned with Jamie's bold expressions, a vivid contrast to his own stifled warmth. Thomas felt his heart quicken as he approached the centerpiece, a grand canvas filled with a chaotic symphony of colors, seemingly alive under the gallery lights. It was both exhilarating and excruciating to witness Jamie's unchained creativity, a raw and powerful testament of his hidden capabilities. "We made it, Dad," Jamie exclaimed, eyes gleaming as he spotted Thomas amidst the crowd. The sincerity in his voice pierced through the oppressive fog of doubt that had settled over Thomas for years. His son's enthusiasm echoed with hope, a light shattering the fortress he had built around himself. "Are you proud of me?" Jamie asked, the unguarded question rife with need. The reality of that question blinded Thomas for a moment. What was pride if it resided in a hollow corporate space instead of their shared life? Guilt resonated deeply as a wave of clarity washed over him. A chasm had been carved between their connection from ambition's relentless grasp. Thomas's voice faltered, gripped by a revelation he had long evaded. "I should have been here more." Right then, the realization hit him, the courage to confront his own failures. But that acknowledgement wasn't enough. He needed to go beyond mere admission. He needed to unravel the roots of his ambitions, to rewire the narrative that success equated to neglect. As faces turned toward him, he realized the impact of his presence extended beyond investment returns. It could reshape the trajectory of Jamie's life. He was no longer just a towering figure in a suit. Instead, he stood as a father ready to embrace his son's identity, a commitment ready to blossom. As applause swelled around him for Jamie's work, Thomas took a deep breath, steeling his resolve. Perhaps the bonds of parenthood could morph under the flickering lights of artistic expression. He needed to reclaim this relationship, not just for Jamie, but for himself. Yet, the pulse of the gallery hummed with potential and anxiety. While the gallery buzzed with appreciation, Thomas felt the creaking of his own ambitions shifting, a delicate balance swaying dangerously. What sacrifices would he still have to make to honor this newfound dedication? A decision hung in the air, pregnant with what could follow. What might this journey cost him in the corporate world? As Jamie turned to him, smile beaming, the possibilities unfurled into the future. Would Thomas's ability to redefine success redefine his life altogether? The urgency of this revelation set his heart racing, leaving him on the brink of a clearer understanding but also facing the daunting task of dismantling his empire. What would it take to forge a new legacy rooted in love? The aftermath of the exhibition reverberated through Thomas's mind like an echo, vibrant and dissonant. He left the gallery, the noise of applause still ringing in his ears, and found himself walking the quiet streets, the cityscape stark in the evening glow. The triumph of Jamie's work sat warmly in his heart, yet an undercurrent of dread lurked just below the surface. What did it mean to be a father? Until that day, Thomas had compartmentalized his identity into two distinct worlds, one governed by spreadsheets and profits, the other by the tender, yet precariously fragile bond with his son. He had never imagined the stark realization that he could be both a driving force in the corporate realm and an engaged parent. In feeling the awakening within him, however, he also realized the painstaking dismantling that lay ahead. His mind was a tapestry of thoughts, each weaving through the fabric of his resolve. Jamie's raw talent clawed at the corners of Thomas's heart, pushing him to examine his previous choices. Each negotiation and deal had left Jamie carved into a shadow, a boy whose desires had often been eclipsed by figures on a balance sheet. Navigating back into the concrete jungle of corporate America was daunting. At home, he could no longer overlook the art strewn across Jamie's room, each painting, each canvas demanding a space in their lives. They were declarations of self, a contrast to the sterile environment of boardrooms where human instincts were relegated to footnotes in reports. The next day, at the office, Thomas felt palpable tension as he sat at the polished mahogany conference table with his partners. The conversation swung between market analysis and investment strategies, a realm that once felt comfortable but had begun to suffocate him. Ignoring the discourse, he was caught in a tempest swirling with thoughts of Jamie, of how he'd missed his son's artistic spirit and how he might worship this newfound understanding instead. "What's on your mind, Tom?" queried Graham, his longtime colleague, snapping him back to the present. Thomas hesitated, words choking in his throat. He thought of the corporate retreat scheduled for next week, another event he had planned, skimming over the real reason for keeping Jamie at a distance. "I think we should reconsider our priorities," he finally said, each word deliberate yet heavy. "This company has thrived, but at what cost? I want to explore a new alignment between our business and community." Gasps followed the statement, incredulity mingling with interest. No one had expected to hear a passionate plea about impact and connection from their calculating leader. This was more than a tactic to boost employee weekend morale, it was a call to transform, a chance to breathe life into something beyond profits, the chance for his ambitions to mean something more. But with every word, doubt clawed at him. His colleagues liked the profits, the status, would they accept a shift in focus? The concept of art as a bridge to foster relationships, particularly with Jamie, was right at the forefront of his thoughts. Yet, even as he stirred a revolution within the room, he felt the tightening grip of anxiety over what was at stake. That it was this internal conflict that ignited a flicker of determination. Fear of failure in both arenas propelled him forward even as his heart pounded with uncertainty. Overwhelmed yet resolute, he envisioned bringing his son into the fold, not merely to witness a shift in his father's ambition but to be a catalyst for it. As the meeting adjourned, Thomas stepped into the crisp air outside, adrenaline coursing through him like electricity. This was not just about changing a company, but about metamorphosing into the father Jamie needed, a protector of his artistic expression. Yet, lurking shadows of dissent loomed on the horizon, whispers of multiple stakeholders whose control he might lose unsettled him. Could he stand resolute against the anticipated resistance? The answers seemed intimidatingly vague. As he drove home, heart racing, he contemplated his next move. How could he manage both the empire he had built and the fragile bond with Jamie? What fundamental changes would he need to make within himself to be truly present, not just in the gallery but in every canvas of their lives? The stakes felt higher than ever, and as the sun set behind towering buildings, the horizon stretched before him, a promise and a challenge intertwined. Thomas knew the forthcoming decisions would be monumental. He was at the edge of redefining his life's purpose, a tipping point that held both potential and peril. How far was he willing to go for love's sake, and would it be enough to sustain that journey? Would the world he had created crumble, or would it withstand the test of true fatherhood? As these provocative questions chased him through the twilight, he understood one thing all too clearly: the battle had only just begun. Thomas awoke the next morning with a sense of weight pressing down on his chest. The realization of the path he had embarked upon collided with thoughts of what it would mean to prioritize both love and responsibility. He could no longer retreat to the comfortable confines of corporate performances, he needed to act. As he prepared for work, his resolve solidified. The gallery showcasing Jamie's art had become a benchmark of potential, a tangible representation of everything he desired to nurture within his son. He could already envision how to translate those aspirations into the lifeblood of the company, a meandering thread that wove through both personal and professional realms. He arrived at the office with determination, however, the atmosphere buzzed with muted skepticism. Glancing at the boardroom, he noted how its cold walls mirrored the fiscal-focused hearts of his partners. Their conversations, once invigorating, now felt suffocating. Time to break the ice. Let us draft a proposal, he declared during the morning huddle. We can incorporate art workshops for local youth as part of our corporate responsibility initiatives. His voice rang out, and he sensed a ripple of surprise through the room. But we're a financial firm, Thomas, Graham interjected, his brow furrowed, skepticism dripping from his tone. Are we trying to turn into some non-profit organization? The resistance hung heavily in the air, but Thomas kept his gaze level. Not every initiative has to be measured by profitability. Think of it as an investment in potential. An art program can cultivate creativity not just in children, but in our employees. Innovation arises from diverse perspectives. As he spoke, a sliver of hope flickered in his mind, even as internal doubts clawed at him. He was not merely advocating for something intangible, he was proposing a transformation that could empower both Jamie and the community. The group remained silent, weighing his words. Although they leaned heavily toward a consensus of disbelief, he caught glimpses of interest flickering beneath their veneer. Perhaps they recognized that stagnation would not bear the firm any fruit in the evolving landscape of corporate culture. His presentation of the vision had ignited a different kind of fight within him, a sacred responsibility to reconcile these two worlds. Yet, the specter of dissent resurfaced as he envisioned the potential fallout from his partner's disapproval. Would they resent him for diverting from their accustomed path? In that moment, he made a choice. If he were to initiate this journey, he could not tiptoe around unfounded fears. He needed to confront resistance head-on. I understand your concerns, he pressed. But listen, our company's success can enable us to impact lives outside our glass towers. We can bridge a gap for children like Jamie who sees the world differently. What if creating a supportive environment led to unexpected innovations that propel us forward? Graham's expression softened for a brief moment. Impact costs money, Thomas. You know that. Impact generates loyalty, Graham. It refreshes purpose, he countered, conviction spilling over. After the meeting, Thomas sat at his desk, adrenaline pouring through him. He felt both exhilarated and exposed, his heart racing alongside uncertainty. This was merely the beginning of a struggle against the powerful grip of traditional expectations. He wrestled with the potential backlash from stakeholders whose expectations aligned closely with profit margins, not community contributions. For a fleeting moment, as he stared at a blank document, his thoughts flickered back to Jamie, the boy whose art represented freedom and imagination. He grasped a new sense of clarity, a burgeoning understanding of the dual paths he had to navigate. As the afternoon wore on, he received an unexpected email from Hannah, the art teacher at Jamie's school. She expressed excitement about Thomas's proposal, offering to help connect him with local artists who could facilitate workshops. Her enthusiasm ignited something within him, a feeling of gathering momentum, unearthing possibilities he hadn't considered before. Yet, just as hope began to settle like a comforting blanket, his phone chimed with a new message. Graham had convened an emergency meeting. Thomas's stomach twisted into knots as he scanned the text. Your proposal has created quite a stir. Be prepared. The thought of confronting their concerns filled him with apprehension. Would he have to justify his choices? Would they question his commitment to both the company and his son? Standing at this precipice, he couldn't escape the gnawing sensation that a new reality was on the horizon. Would he triumph in his mission to shift company values, or would he face the fallout of disruption? The question loomed larger than before with each tick of the clock, echoing in the silence of his office as he steeled himself for the challenge ahead. What awaited him within the confines of that meeting room lay shrouded in uncertainty, but he was prepared to confront the backlash, whatever the stakes. The narrative of his journey was shifting rapidly, defining moments were on the brink of unfolding. The time had come to face both his past and the legacy he wished to build. Thomas stood outside the boardroom, feeling the chill of polished glass and steel that surrounded him, a stark contrast to the warmth growing within his heart. The emergency meeting felt like an impending storm. Each tick of the clock seemed to mount the tension. His breath quickened as he recalled his vision, how he wanted to nurture every ounce of creativity in Jamie and countless children like him. But would he be able to convince the partners to share that vision? Take a deep breath, he muttered to himself, reminding himself that every great endeavor carries with it the weight of uncertainty. He entered the room, his resolve hardened like tempered steel, preparing to leave no doubt in his partner's minds about the potential of his proposal. The atmosphere turned electric as he walked in. 8 pairs of eyes riveted on him, each one reflecting the skepticism he'd encountered. He felt vulnerable but steeled himself against it. This discussion mattered far beyond the boardroom. It was an embodiment of his commitment to Jamie and others like him. "Thank you for coming together on short notice," Thomas began, projecting calmness he desperately hoped to feel. "I appreciate your willingness to discuss the proposal I presented earlier." Graham was the first to break the silence, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed defiantly. "You created quite a stir, Thomas. We believe investing in art and culture is tangential to our primary goals. We're not here to foster creativity for the sake of it, not at the cost of losing focus on our financial responsibilities." "I know this isn't traditional," Thomas interjected, urgency in his voice. "But this isn't about diverting from our core, it's about redefining our core principles. Consider the potential benefits. It's not just about investing in creativity, it's about investing in our future." He took a calculated step closer to the table, his heart drumming furiously. "Engaging with the community means we gain their trust, support, and loyalty, translating into tangible returns." There was a moment of silence as the partners considered his words. Thomas felt gravity weigh on him. This was an emotional labor unlike any financial analysis. He could almost feel the flicker of doubt and curiosity on some of their faces. "But how do you propose we measure success?" another partner asked, her voice skeptical but open. "What metrics will show us this is worthwhile?" "Art can elicit passion and innovation," he argued, tapping into his knowledge of how creativity often intersected with marketing and product development. "We'll measure through employee engagement surveys, tracking the initiative's impact on team morale and performances. This will become part of our company culture, a new metric for success." Convinced he was gaining traction, he pressed on. "We can partner with local artists, providing workshops that foster collaboration and creativity. Imagine artists inspiring our teams, potentially leading to new ideas in our work. This isn't just about art, it cultivates relationships that will bring fresh perspectives into our financial strategies." The tension in the room shifted slightly, but he could feel Graham's ferocity still simmering beneath the surface. "What makes you think stakeholders will buy into this transition? We're already at a risk of alienating our core clients." Thomas's stomach churned. "Because they're evolving as well. They're looking to support companies that understand the value of their communities. Turnover is a greater financial burden. Our vision is a strategy for long-term loyalty. Think of it as an evolution of our brand." Suddenly, someone articulated what Thomas feared most. "But what about our reputation? How do we maintain excellence while indulging your personal passion project?" The words cut through him like ice water. Was this really perceived as just a passion project? Would they see it as anything other than an extension of professional responsibility? "Excellence comes in various forms," he replied earnestly, fighting for his vision, his voice unwavering. "This initiative can elevate us not just in profitability but as a beacon for who we want to represent as a firm, supportive, progressive, innovative. It reflects not only the kind of company we aspire to be but also the kind of father I want to be." For a breathless moment, Thomas sensed a shift in the mood. His honesty struck chords of acknowledgement, if not agreement. But he still felt the dark clouds of skepticism lingering, foreboding uncertainty teasing the edges of their discussion. Then, Graham leaned in, his brow furrowed. "And if it fails?" It was a dagger to the chest, the very fear that haunted Thomas. "Then we learn. We adapt. But we must try, that is the responsibility I accept for my son, my firm, and our future." As the meeting began to drift into deliberation, Thomas felt the weight of their judgment still hanging over him. Could he face the dire consequences if he succeeded or failed? It was a tension he could not escape. The clock ticked on, and he knew that whatever unfolded next would redefine not only his professional trajectory but could very well reshape his identity as a father. Would he be able to weave a legacy that embraced both creative freedom and fiscal responsibility? Just then, a call came through. The message read, "The board has made a decision. We need to meet immediately." Anxiety coursed through Thomas as he swiftly gathered his belongings, realizing that the pivotal moment was just around the corner. Would this proposal close a door, or could it herald a new beginning? The door swung open, and Thomas stepped inside, his heart thudding in his chest, a relentless reminder of the stakes. The boardroom felt more oppressive than before, the air thick with the expectation of a verdict that could tilt his life off its axis. Graham sat at the head of the table, crystal-clear determination etched across his face. Around him, the other partners shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another. Thomas could see fingers drumming anxiously on tabletops, bodies leaning slightly forward, illustrating that they were either on the edge of their seats with anticipation or equally ready to pounce on any sign of weakness in his case. "Let us get straight to it," Graham began, voice sharp and unapologetic. "We've deliberated your proposal, Thomas. While it has merit, we're not prepared to embrace this shift in direction. The risks it entails are simply too high." A knot tightened in Thomas's stomach. He had known this response was a possibility, yet hearing the words amplified his doubt. Had he been foolish to believe he could bridge his personal convictions with corporate objectives? The flicker of hope he had felt during the first meeting began to fade, but he knew he couldn't give up. "Let me clarify what's at stake," Thomas asserted, forcing a calm demeanor despite the storm brewing inside him. "This isn't just a project or a sideline for me. It's about proving that we can run a successful company while prioritizing our responsibilities to the community and the values we embody. It's about creating a sustainable legacy." Soft murmurs rippled through the room. A couple of partners shifted their gaze, possibly reconsidering this from a different angle. They had been part of the company through good times and bad and understood all too well that the landscape of corporate responsibility was changing. Graham raised an eyebrow. "You call it a legacy, I see it as a gamble with limited upside. We've seen many leaders fail in their endeavors when straying from the core." That sentence landed heavily, rattling doubts deep within Thomas. He could feel the ground shifting. The roots of his conviction threatened to be uprooted by the weight of Graham's words. What was he really fighting for? Was this venture his calling, or merely a bold escape from an uncomfortable reality? "Every bold move requires a strategy," Thomas countered, his voice more resolute. "We are wired to adapt. There's a growing market for companies that support local communities, and you know as well as I do that aligning our brand with those values will pay off. Imagine the media coverage, the goodwill it taps into, a zeitgeist that is undeniable." "Media and goodwill don't feed families," Graham retorted, visibly frustrated. "People want numbers. The bottom line is what we report to our investors." Thomas sensed a rising tide of frustration but had to channel it into clarity. "But I'm already a father, aware of the legacy I want to build for Jamie. It's not merely about profits, it's about determining what kind of people we are. Wouldn't it be great if our children could be proud to say, 'My father helped make this world a better place'?" A silence fell, stretching like a taut wire. Thomas' words had pierced through some of their armor. He could see furrows of contemplation marking their brows. Just when hope began to thread through that stillness, Graham leaned back, folding his arms. "Passion is commendable, but it doesn't guarantee success. The question remains, what if this fails? The stakes are far too high." This time, Thomas was quieter, yet his voice resonated with sincerity. "And what if it doesn't? What if this is the turning point that defines our company and my relationship with my son? I must take this risk, not just for us, but so Jamie can grow into a world where creativity and commerce can coexist." The partners' expressions shifted once more, now a blend of contemplation and unease. It was the moment of truth, the precipice of decision. Thomas understood that the stakes had jumped far beyond corporate culture, they encompassed personal growth and the bittersweet realization that change was never without consequence. His heart raced as Graham's gaze softened, tension ebbing from his body. "This is a lot to think about," he finally said, a mix of intrigue and reluctance flooding his eyes. As they began to express further thoughts, Thomas felt a surge of adrenaline. This was not just a pitch, it had evolved into a powerful, lived experience intertwined with love and duty. Yet doubt still sat heavily with him. The moment dragged on until an unexpected voice interjected, "Perhaps we could explore a pilot period before fully committing to the change." A fresh face spoke up, the newest partner, an apparent naivety mixed with open curiosity. Thomas felt a glimmer of hope. Could it be that a pathway forward had just appeared? But an unsettling thought loomed. Would the road ahead be entirely free from obstacles, or was this merely the beginning of a different battle? The meeting concluded, leaving Thomas with a fragile sense of accomplishment yet an underlying anxiety. He needed to prepare not just for the next conversation but for the new challenges that would arise. As he gathered his things, the message echoed in his mind. It was not just about articulating a vision, it was about fighting for the future he envisioned for Jamie. With one last lingering glance at the boardroom, Thomas stepped outside, aware that the next decision could either propel him into the future or render him a spectator. A storm was brewing on the horizon, and he would need every ounce of his resolve to weather it. "Are you ready to face your next challenge?" he whispered to himself as he stepped into the unknown. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows as Thomas walked to his car. The weight of the boardroom discussion had shifted from his mind to his body. Each step felt heavier, each breath a deliberate effort. He knew he had to harness the adrenaline and uncertainty swirling within him. The stakes had escalated, and Tom wasn't alone anymore. Jamie's future intertwined with his professional ambitions. As he settled into the driver's seat, the hum of the engine offered a momentary reprieve. He had secured a meager concession from the partners, a pilot initiative that would explore his vision. Yet doubt crept in. What if this wasn't enough? What if he couldn't deliver on the promise he made not just to the board, but to Jamie? The thought gnawed at him. Driving home, he felt the pull of conflicting thoughts. On one hand, there was the excitement of possibility, but deep down, an insidious whisper questioned whether he was equipped to navigate the hurdles ahead. Could he balance boldness with pragmatism? Could he rally the team to believe in a shared vision when they might still see him as a rookie rather than a leader? Pulling into the driveway, he glanced at the house home, sanctuary, an ever-present reminder of why he was fighting. Jamie's laughter echoed in his mind, so pure against the backdrop of the day's weighty decisions. As he opened the door and entered, the cheerful chaos of toys strewn across the living room momentarily dulled the worries pressing against his chest. Jamie was sitting on the floor, deep in concentration, building something elaborate out of colorful blocks. "Daddy, look!" Jamie exclaimed, looking up with wide, hopeful eyes when Thomas walked in. "I'm making a tower just like in our book." "Wow, buddy. That looks amazing," Thomas responded, kneeling beside him. In that moment, watching Jamie's brilliance unfold, he felt a surge of inspiration. Jamie, with his unwavering focus and innate creativity, mirrored the qualities Thomas craved as he prepared for the challenges ahead. As they built together, Thomas's internal dialogue shifted. His mind recalibrated. He recognized the need to be patient not just with Jamie but also with himself. This was about building foundations, not only in the tower before him but also in his professional life. "I think your tower needs a strong base to hold everything up," he suggested, pulling from Jamie's instinctual understanding of stability. As Jamie scrunched his brows in thought, Thomas realized the metaphor extended beyond blocks. It resonated with the corporate landscape he aimed to reshape. "Sure, Daddy. Like the partners on your team, right?" Jamie replied, an innocent understanding shining in his eyes. "Exactly. Just like that," Thomas said, a newfound resolve crystallizing in his mind. He needed to forge alliances, to nurture collaboration, not just dictate ideals. He had to be the kind of leader who inspired rather than pressured. That night, after reading their favorite story, he lay in bed unable to sleep, replaying the day's events in his mind. He couldn't rest until he strategized his next move. He would need data, examples of success stories from other companies, research illustrating strong community ties yielding corporate resilience. He would also need to ensure that each partner's voice was included in the journey forward. They might resist at first, but if he could weave their concerns into a broader narrative, he might just win more than a pilot program. He could win their trust. As dawn broke, Thomas scrutinized his notes, outlining his approach. Confidence surged as he envisioned the next meeting. He would present a compelling argument, one anchored in evidence yet laden with the emotional intelligence that had always guided his decisions as a father. But a nagging voice returned: was it enough? The ambition within him wrestled against the fear of failure. The sheer enormity of leading such change loomed, daunting and inspiring all at once. Could he be the one to unite a diverse group of partners behind a vision that married corporate success with meaningful impact? Or would he find himself alone, navigating the tumultuous waters of corporate politics? He had no answers yet, just an inescapable determination as he stepped into the shower. Today would be the day where he faced the board with newfound resolve, but inwardly he grappled with another realization. A confrontation loomed on the horizon, one that transcended business metrics. It was about confronting his own doubts and fears, the true emotional gamble he'd have to embrace. With steely determination, Thomas emerged, ready to showcase not just a proposal but a heartfelt challenge, one that would demand every ounce of his courage. But as he dressed, the tension coiled tighter. What if this gamble didn't pay off? The time had come to face not only the board but the truth within himself, he thought as he reached for the door, ready to meet destiny but uncertain of the outcome ahead. The conference room loomed before Thomas like a battleground, imposing and sterile, its long table gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights. He took a deep breath, steel settling over his spine. Today was not merely about numbers, charts, or projections. It was about changing perceptions. As he entered, the murmurs of colleagues subsided, eyes turning toward him, both skeptical and curious. He felt the weight of their gazes, each carrying their expectations and doubts. He could almost hear the unspoken questions: can he lead? Can he bridge the gap between traditional thinking and progressive change? He set his laptop down, fingers trembling slightly as he prepared to connect it to the projector. The room buzzed with anticipation, an undercurrent of tension merging with the coffee-drenched air. Flipping his notes, he took a moment to center himself, recalling Jamie's enthusiasm from the night before. It was a simple truth that united their world's strength lay in a solid foundation. "Thank you all for gathering today," he began, searching each face for signs of engagement. "I'd like to share thoughts on our new initiative, which I believe could not only bring us strategic gains but also enhance our identity as a forward-thinking company." His voice steadied as he moved into the context, the foundation built on data and insights he had meticulously gathered. As he clicked through his presentation, he felt a growing momentum. Charts revealed industry trends, case studies illustrated successful integrations, but it was the emotional component, the potential for positive impact, that he fought to convey. It was where he felt most at home. "These changes aren't merely beneficial to our bottom line," he asserted, his voice rising assertively, "they align our company's purpose with real-world needs." Skepticism flared in the eyes of some partners. A hushed ripple of apprehension washed over the room. He sensed their hesitation. Institutions were often resistant to all but incremental changes. Diving deeper, he transitioned into the personal stories behind his research, the startups thriving on community engagement, the companies cultivating respect and purpose. Allowing our employees to invest their talents in initiatives that resonate with their values could yield extraordinary results. Just as a child builds confidence with each block placed, we can nurture something exceptional here. Mid-presentation, an unexpected voice cut through the air. But Thomas, Peter, a formidable senior partner, interjected, "Putting resources into these initiatives comes with risks. What evidence do we have that such efforts will translate to profit?" Thomas felt the heat rise in his chest. This was the intersection of his fear and determination. "Peter, I completely understand your concerns. I too think of profit, but what if I told you that companies prioritizing these initiatives report not only employee satisfaction but also greater market resilience? This isn't a gamble, it's an investment in our future. The room shifted slightly, some partners nodding in faint agreement. The dissonance of fear and possibility clashed within him. He was moving closer, yet uncertainty loomed larger. With conviction, he shared the nearing deadline for endorsement from the partners. This would be his last shot to gain their trust and support. He laid his heart bare, his voice nearly breaking as he shared a story about Jamie, the resilience of a young mind, free of societal expectations. Just as he builds with blocks, we too can construct something remarkable together, if we trust the potential within each of us. Silence settled like snow. He held his breath, gauging their response. An uneasy tension hung heavily. Would they truly open their minds to growth? Or would they succumb to the fear that had kept them tethered to the status quo? Finally, the room erupted with chatter, partners exchanging thoughts too fragmented for coherence. Some faces flushed with indignity, others sparked with interest. Behind their discussions lay a deeper challenge, the fear of the unknown versus the hope for transformation. The moment felt surreal, as if in slow motion. He had laid his soul bare, yet still felt a deep fissure of doubt. What if he had made the wrong move? Thomas exited the room, heart racing, grappling with a rising sense of vulnerability. As he leaned against the wall, he wrestled with the outcome that had yet to unfold in the chaos behind him, but nearing the end was a question that had begun to haunt him: would he manage to not just win the day but truly reshape his legacy? As he contemplated the risks ahead, Thomas was left with one lingering thought. What awaited him on the other side of this confrontation might redefine everything he believed about success, both personally and professionally. Thomas found himself walking the sterile hallway, breaths coming in deep, concentrated gulps. He felt as if the air had thickened, weighing upon his chest. Outside the conference room, whispers and laughter erupted, creating an ill-timed backdrop to his inner storm. The feedback was still ringing in his ears, a cacophony of affirmation tempered by skepticism. Could he possibly navigate the tempest he had stirred? His mind flickered back to Peter's piercing question, the challenge distilled into two simple words: show me. Each syllable echoed, like a bell tolling the gravity of the situation. Taking a seat on a nearby bench, he pulled out a notebook, pages crammed with meticulously drawn charts and rationale. The details of his initiative could only go so far. He needed a more profound argument, one rooted in authenticity. But what could he tap into? His thoughts careened to Jamie. The boy's unyielding curiosity, his relentless drive to build and create, reminded Thomas of the passion that lay dormant within him. He couldn't suppress a smile, remembering how Jamie communicated not in elaborate phrases, but in genuine excitement. In that moment, Thomas had a revelation: the power of connection might be his strongest ally. Drawing a deep breath, he opened his laptop. Instead of rehashing numbers, he began to sketch a narrative, one that illustrated human experience rather than graphs and analytics. If he didn't just present a case for change but also shared a story of transformation, maybe he could ignite empathy. Wasn't he at the heart of what he was advocating for? Hours passed as he reshaped his approach. He infused anecdotes from his own life struggles that had once seemed insurmountable, opportunities that had blossomed in the most unlikely places. He illustrated how taking risks had paved the path to his current standing and how each misstep had crafted the man he was today. However, as he assembled his thoughts into a cohesive form, an unsettling thought snagged his attention. What if he failed again? The shadow of doubt lurked, gnawing at his resolve. But perhaps this was part of the process. Transformation often required vulnerability. The deeper he delved, the more he realized that each setback was an investment in his own growth. By the time he returned to the conference room, it felt different, charged with an unpredictable energy. The flickering light seemed to mimic the frantic thump of his heartbeat, setting the rhythm for what lay ahead. He stepped inside and paused just beyond the threshold. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Partners appeared worn and contemplative, as if wrestling with an internal storm of their own. There was a flicker of resolve in his gut, the quiet message that urged him forward. "Thank you for the continued dialogue," he started, this time leaning into the presence of his peers with more assuredness. I've reflected on our previous conversation and I believe it's essential to realign our purpose around more than just profit. As he spoke, Thomas could feel himself transforming further, each word laced with intention. He shared Jamie's unfiltered perspective on exploration, how every building block represented a chance to blossom, building on failures and triumphs alike. In each of us, there lies a child who dares to think differently, he asserted, passion bubbling to the surface. What if we embraced the unexpected? What if we chose not just to respond to the market, but to shape it? We are at a juncture our choices today will echo tomorrow. The simplicity of his message cut through the noise like a beacon. Faces turned toward him, curiosity igniting where skepticism had once reigned. He could sense the tide shifting, transformation no longer felt like a daunting mountain but a shared journey fraught with possibility. But just as the air thickened with hope, he caught Peter's gaze, sharp and penetrating. The senior partner hadn't fully drawn back his weapon, and Thomas could feel the impending confrontation lurking just beneath the surface. For all his growth since that chaotic morning, the pivotal question pressed down hard once more: how much was he truly willing to risk to alter their path? As the moment of truth loomed ahead, Thomas stood at the precipice, aware that the next step he took could either lead to his ultimate victory or a painful defeat. What awaited him on this path would define not just his professional journey, but who he became in the process. As the moment stretched thin in that boardroom, Thomas Lancaster embraced a newfound resolve that was palpable, a wellspring of determination flowing from his pivotal choice to support Jamie both as a father and a visionary leader. The internal struggle was no longer just about the art initiative, it was a manifestation of every lesson learned through Jamie's artwork, where each brushstroke conveyed a spirit yearning to be recognized and valued. Let's take a step back, he instructed, acknowledging the palpable tension in the room. Our industry is evolving, as is the landscape of business. My passion is not just about my son's future, it is about the legacy we leave behind. I owe it to Jamie, to every child who sees the world differently, to pave a way for creativity in everything we do. As he spoke, the air seemed to shift. Partners who had once sat rigidly in their seats began to lean forward, eyes glinting with interest and, perhaps, a glimmer of hope. Thomas's openness, a stark contrast to previous meetings that relied on strategies and spreadsheets, breathed new life into the discussion. It was time to transform the conversation and bolden the trajectory of their firm and, inevitably, his relationship with Jamie. With each sentence, Thomas felt lightness encroach upon the weight he had carried for far too long. It became not just a pitch for corporate change but a declaration of purpose. Imagine a company that isn't just profitable but also inspires, he asserted, weaving a narrative of potential transformation that blended both quantitative outcomes and qualitative impacts. By investing in the arts, we draw creativity into our core. Our financial success hinges on innovation birthed through diverse thinking. Bolstered by the resilience he gained from Jamie, every assertion felt more potent, infectious, as if the room buzzed with the very essence of possibility. The resistance he faced only sparked vigor in his delivery, especially as he began to recount stories behind successful companies, those that dared to embrace community ties and foster employee creativity. Each example painted a vision where business paralleled the values he so desperately wished to impart to Jamie. Then came an unexpected rose in the chorus of doubts. A supportive voice emerged, offering to explore how they might structure this creative initiative into an actionable plan. The hesitation began to dissolve, yielding to collaborative energy. This was no longer a solitary battle. Partners joined him in shaping a better plan, perhaps not fully trusting yet curious enough to consider this path. We can undertake a pilot project, another partner chimed in, acknowledging the necessity of a cautious approach. Let's start with art workshops for our employees, using those experiences as both inspiration and community engagement. As the tone of the meeting evolved, Thomas's heart swelled with gratitude and renewed hope. The corporate tide was shifting, a sharp contrast to the rigid atmosphere that had previously confined them. He was not just paving the way for art, he was crafting an environment for Jamie and countless others to flourish, even if only one step at a time. Let's define success together, Thomas encouraged, rallying them around the importance of metrics that measured growth in both creativity and community engagement, ensuring every stakeholder could take ownership in this venture. This isn't just my passion project, it's a strategic investment in who we want to become. As the discussions became more animated, strategies were debated, and commitments were made, a palpable sense of belonging enveloped the room. In that moment, from the depths of his essence, Thomas realized this path was less about winning an argument and more about rediscovering connection both with his partners and with Jamie. He had accomplished more than just gaining approval, he had ignited awareness, brought together a team, and solidified the belief that they could drive change. Together, the meeting adjourned with hopeful aspirations etched into the plans, a new-found foundation upon which they could build. As Thomas stepped outside, a wave of exhilaration washed over him. He had indeed conquered inner conflict by aligning his personal story with his corporate identity. This was not just a victory for Jamie but a celebration of hope, resilience, and shared vision. Looking at the horizon, he felt solid confidence, a sense of purpose intact and reconnections revitalized. He had emerged not just as a leader within the boardroom but as a father who would actively nurture creativity in his son's life. It was a milestone of achievement, one that would ripple into the future. Today was only the beginning, Thomas thought, heart soaring with possibilities, recognizing that life had just opened to new dimensions of understanding and purpose. His fatherhood and leadership were inseparable now, they had blossomed hand in hand, forging a legacy he would proudly share with Jamie. Now, as a living embodiment of transformation, he would champion the values of love, creativity, and resilience, fostering an environment that would ultimately honor the very essence of what it means to support a child's dreams. And as he contemplated this journey ahead, one undeniable truth emerged: it was time to take that next step. Thomas was no longer merely observing from afar, but actively crafting a narrative where his successes would intertwine with moments painted in colors only a father could envision. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support our journey. Comment your reactions and theories about today's exciting conclusions. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative tale. You need to subscribe now, it's your moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this groundbreaking journey.